Hi everyone, welcome back to the series 5 Easy Steps to Speak Spanish with Confidence. My name is David and I'm really excited about today's lesson in which I'm going to teach you how to enroll in conversational Spanish classes. Before we get started, here's a little quick review for you. So if you've been following me since day number 1, you know that our first easy step to speak Spanish with confidence was to actually create a Spanish journal in which you're going to write about your objectives and your inspiration behind learning Spanish so you know how to stay on track with your Spanish studies as well as to stay inspired. The next easy step is to start learning just 10 new vocabulary words every day. These are words that should be based in the daily interactions that you're having with people, which you should be identifying in your Spanish journal. So they play well with each other. And our first 2 steps are really geared towards teaching you how to start studying the Spanish that's going to be most relevant to you in your day-to-day interactions, which is going to enable you to start speaking Spanish as quickly as possible and give you that confidence that you're looking for. The next few pieces of the series are going to deal directly with how to study Spanish conversationally and how to practice it. Today's lesson is easy step number 3, and it's all about teaching you how to find conversation classes in your area. So directly I'm going to teach you how to look for a school, how to do some research on the school using the internet and some other tools that are available to you. I'm going to give you some very useful questions that you can use when you're calling in and going in to meet with the program administrators, and especially what's important is how to decide on the correct school for you based off of your goals. There are many different types of programs out here to help you learn Spanish, and I'm going to kind of help clarify that so you can make a decision based off of what's really important to you. But first I'd like to just go back and take a little bit of a history lesson here on the evolution and the history of Spanish. This will help you not only throughout your Spanish studies, but also help you understand the importance of why I'm talking about conversational Spanish classes today. I think one of the first points, if we're going to take a look at Spanish as a language, is that we need to understand that Spanish was born directly from Latin. Now, we're talking some 2,000 years ago. The Roman Empire really dominated most of Europe as well as parts of Africa and the Middle East. And with that, the language Latin dominated these areas in which the Romans were doing business and commerce in, and as well as warfare and all the other things that went along with the Roman Empire. An interesting thing that I like to talk about is that Spanish is considered a Romance language. I think most people understand that Spanish, French, Italian, Portuguese, and Romanian, some people might not know about Romanian, but Romanian's in there. These are considered Romance languages. Not because they're romantic, not because they they make you think about things of love and romance, but because they're from Rome. So that'll help you kind of correlate all that back to Latin times. Now, what you have to understand is Spanish, as well as English, as well as Chinese, Japanese, any language in the world evolve over time. And because really at this time, a relatively small percentage of the population had access to really good educational institutions, so very few people actually learned how to read and write Latin. And because of that, what we see is these other languages being born from Latin. So that's why today we have French, Spanish, Romanian, Italian, Portuguese, all having come from Latin. They're just essentially dirty versions of Latin, or what we call here vulgar Latin. Now, Spanish started evolving around the year 200 and pretty much took over the entire country of Spain until about the year 700, when we saw during these warring and turbulent times a group of the Arabic-speaking Moors came up and actually conquered the Spanish Empire. And with that, they brought their language, which was Arabic, as well as their culture and their religion and all these other things that go along with that. And from about the year 700 to 1400, Spain was actually a predominantly Arabic-speaking country. Now, later in the 1400s, the Spaniards came back to power, overthrew the Arabic leaders, and brought back into the region the language and the culture and the religion and all these things. And so because of that, today actually about 8% of the Spanish language is based off of Arabic. So if anybody out there speaks Arabic, you'll start to notice some similarities between some of the words that you already know and the Spanish words that you're learning. After that, when the Spanish came back to power, they started exploring the world and conquering most of the Americas. Today, I'm actually located in Colorado, which Colorado is actually a Spanish word meaning red. So we are actually in, if you live in Denver or anywhere else here in Colorado, this is actually a Spanish, originally, well, maybe not originally, but for a very long period of time was a Spanish-speaking part of the world. Now, the Spaniards conquered most of North America, most of South America, and even there are little pockets here in Africa that they colonized, as well as over here in Asia, in the Philippines. Spanish had a great influence on the culture and the language as well. So Spanish is truly spoken all over the world, along with English. If you can learn how to speak Spanish and you already know English, then you can pretty much travel and live and work almost anywhere in the world pretty comfortably. Now, today, Spanish is spoken by over 500 million people in the world. It's spoken on 5 different continents, and if you live here in the United States, it's now the second most spoken language here in the United States. An interesting fact for you, today there are more Spanish speakers here in the United States than there are in the country of Spain. So think about that. Even if you live here in the United States, great language to learn. Now, I want to ask you why you're studying Spanish. And if you're doing your Spanish journal, you should have a fairly good idea of why you're studying Spanish. Now, most people might be studying Spanish because they want to travel or they want to live abroad. Let's go back up. So Sarah, you're going to need to cut this part of the video. So let me ask you this. Why are you studying Spanish? Now, most people would answer this question. Well, I'm studying Spanish so that I can travel around the world, or perhaps I want to go live in Spain for the summer, or I'd like to get some experience working down in Mexico. Another great reason is just because you're living here in a place like Denver or Los Angeles or Miami where there are so many Spanish speakers, maybe you feel like you're a cultural ambassador to the United States and you want to do a better job of making people feel welcome here. A great reason is for work. If you're a teacher, a doctor, if you're in law enforcement, if you work for the government, if you work in retail, if you work in construction, I mean, if you can name the industry and you live in a place where there's as many Spanish speakers as there are here in Colorado, then learning how to speak Spanish will help you in one way or another at your work. And many of my students are learning Spanish because they want to make more money. All right, so why study Spanish? Well, a lot of my students tell me that they want to be able to live and travel around the world, which makes a lot of sense. But I've got an even increasing number of students that are learning Spanish not because they plan on going to a Spanish-speaking country, but because the United States is kind of turning into a Spanish-speaking country. If you live here in Denver, you can certainly appreciate this, and if you live in many other of the major cities around the country, then you know this to be true. There are so many Spanish speakers that are moving here to live and work in the United States that learning how to speak Spanish will help you in the community that you're living in, as well as maybe you feel like you're a cultural ambassador, you're a little tired of kind of the negativity that we're seeing revolving around the immigrant community, and you just want to do your part to make the Spanish speakers feel welcome here and feel appreciated here. So that's a great reason. Now, if you're working in healthcare or the education industry or law enforcement, if you're some type of emergency responder, then you know how important learning how to speak Spanish can be. but we're seeing it in many of our other industries: construction, retail. There are so many students I work with that are learning how to speak Spanish to be able to work and communicate more with people locally here at home. It's incredible. And then finally, I know a lot of students that also have an economic incentive behind it. I know, for example, here in the city of Denver, many of the city and government employees, actually, if they're bilingual, they get a certain 5-10% additional income just because of that bilingual status. So you'll see that learning how to speak another language can also help you make a lot more money. I'm not sure what your personal reasons are. You have to identify that for yourself. But I think when you're learning how to speak a new language, you first want to know what's incentivizing you and motivating you to learn that language. Now, you would think with the long history behind the Spanish language, as well as its influence here in the United States and all the great reasons for learning how to speak Spanish, it should be relatively easy to find a good program, right? Unfortunately, the answer to that is no. It is not actually very easy to find a program. There are so many different options out there to learn how to speak Spanish. You've got the university, you've got your local community college, you've got private language instructors you can find on a place like Craigslist. There are other tutoring agencies that are popping up almost daily. We've also got our software programs. You've got study abroad options or full-on immersion programs. You've got programs for kids, for adults. I guess what I'm trying to say is there are so many options out there. And I think when it comes to learning languages, not many people actually understand what the purpose or the outcome of each one of these programs are. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about the pros and cons for each one of these types of programs that will help you identify a program that's going to give you the results that you need. Everybody's got different reasons for learning a language, and we want to make sure that you're focusing on your reasons that will give you your desired outcome. Now, my first experience with learning the Spanish language was full-on Spanish immersion. So I've actually done immersion programs now in 4 different countries, I think, for periods of time as short as 1 month and periods of time up to a whole year. Now, I want to first and foremost say I think immersion is absolutely great. It's fantastic. It is ultimately what I think everybody should plan on doing if they ever plan on becoming fully fluent in understanding not only the Spanish language, but more importantly, the Spanish culture. But I want to tell you something very, very sincere that's based in my own personal experiences, because I did not do this. I think immersion is great for intermediate and advanced speakers, which means if you're going to move to a country like Spain or Mexico or Argentina, before you do that, try and study Spanish here locally, get a solid foundation in place so that when you get there, you can really take advantage of it. You're already understanding the majority of the language, and it's going to be a fun and great experience. I think it's really great for intermediate and advanced students of Spanish. I think it can be possibly a terrible experience for beginners, resulting in quitting. I almost did it. 2 weeks into my Spanish immersion program, I almost quit. I almost gave up. I'm glad I didn't, because now here I am able to teach you some of the tips and tricks I learned along the way, but I was this close from giving up. So I think it's absolutely great when the time is right. So if what I would advise you to be true is correct, is that you should start by studying locally. Let's take a look at some of the other options. Now, here in Denver, for example, we have, I would say, at least 2, perhaps 3 fairly large universities, which you could go and you can enroll in. Now, if you're a university student, you're going to have to do this, but if you're an adult like me and like many of my students are here, I just want to let you know that university programs are geared towards teaching very academic Spanish. What this means is grammar rules, reading, writing. It's great for people that are looking to go into a career of teaching Spanish, or where Spanish is a major part of their day-to-day activities. For example, myself, I'm now a Spanish teacher. I'm a product of the university program. But I gotta tell you, at the time, I really wish there had been an alternative, because I just wanted to learn how to speak Spanish. And my university programs did not give me the conversation that I was looking for. Why? Because universities deal with incredibly large classes. So my first class that I walked into after my Spanish immersion trip, I came back and I enrolled here at CU Boulder, and I took a semester of Spanish. I walked into a big, gigantic classroom with almost 50 students in it. And it was good in the fact that I could understand what the teacher was telling me, and I had my book and I was able to do the homework activities. But it was, 99% reading and writing and fill in the blank activities, and there was more focus on learning the grammar rules than there was on speaking it. So I memorized all these grammar rules, but memorizing grammar rules doesn't necessarily help you in a conversational situation. So again, just to recap, great for going into a career of teaching Spanish, not so great if you want to learn how to speak Spanish. Okay, another big area that everybody knows about today is computers and software. I feel like there's a new application that comes out for my iPhone almost every single day. Everybody knows about Rosetta Stone, Duolingo are some of the more commonly used applications, but there's at least a dozen out there I can think of. Now, I want to tell you this about software. I think it's great for practice. I recommend all of my students to download Duolingo or to buy Rosetta Stone and to use these applications at home. Because when you're learning a new language, you have to practice, you have to practice, you have to practice more. If you don't have a conversation partner, how are you going to practice? There's only so much homework you can do, and I think these applications are pretty cool for being able to practice and continue the studies outside of class. I also, especially for Rosetta Stone, I really like that they have a voice recognition technology, so you're actually speaking to the computer and it will tell you if you're not saying something the right way. So it's actually pretty good about helping you perfect your accent as well. Okay, so now I'd like to talk to you a little bit about computers and software. First, let me start off by saying I recommend software applications to all of my students. I think they are really great ways for getting extra practice outside of class. And, learning a new language takes practice. You have to do anything and everything you can to be consistent, to make sure you're doing just a little bit every single day. In certain applications, for example, Rosetta Stone has a really cool voice recognition technology built into it. So you actually have to talk to the computer and it will correct you on your pronunciation, or at least it will tell you that you're not pronouncing something the right way. Inevitably, you're going to have questions, and this is where kind of the downside of computers and applications come in. Learning how to speak a language directly means communicating with somebody. You're just never going to have a real conversation with a computer. Furthermore, you're going to have questions and you're not going to be able to ask Rosetta Stone or Duolingo or whatever software program you're using a question. These developers have done a really good job in making them pretty intuitive and fairly easy to kind of guess what's going on, but it's not perfect and you are going to have questions that you will not be able to have answered. So you have to make sure and have some type of real human interaction and instruction as part of your plan to learn how to speak Spanish. Now, my final thing that I want to talk to you about, which is my favorite thing, is called conversation classes. This is a relatively new concept here in the United States. I only learned what a conversation class was from studying and traveling around the world. In Europe, they do a really good job of this. In South America, they do a really good job of this. But this concept of conversation classes has yet to really take off here in the United States, at least for studying languages like Spanish and French and Italian. There's some pretty good ESL programs, English as a second language programs here, but for learning another language here, there are very few programs. So I'm not sure if, depending on where you live, you have a program like this, but I would encourage you to try and find it. If you're looking to learn how to speak Spanish, let me rephrase it that way. If you want to learn how to speak Spanish, I definitely think you need to find conversation classes. If you're looking to teach Spanish, if you want to improve your reading, if you want to improve your writing, if you want to improve your spelling or your grammar or whatever it is, then try and find a program that focuses on that. But if you're looking to get started and you're looking to learn how to speak Spanish for work or for travel or for whatever it may be, try and find a conversational program like what we do here at the language school, because it's going to be practical, it's going to be conversational. It's going to be relevant, especially if you're doing your part to make sure you're learning what's relevant to you. Another thing that I like about conversation classes is you're going to be able to develop friendships and make friends with other people in the class on a different level than you would, say, at a university program. And it should be a mutually beneficial program for you and everybody else that's involved in the class. Everybody should advance at the same pace and become conversational at the same pace. If it's the right type of conversational program, nobody's going to be getting left behind. So, step number one for finding conversational programs is you may or may not, like I said, depending on where you live, find a truly conversational program. So let's start by just typing into Google Spanish classes in whatever the name of tu ciudad, your city is, right? So here in Denver, we'd say Spanish classes in Denver. Now this is what I mean by there's a lot of options out here. According to Google, we have 1,400,000 results. So there's a lot going on out there. We need to learn how to not only look for these programs, but then to do our research. So you should really be able to identify kind of the top, 10 things that show up in the search results. And then one thing I love about modern day technology is we can use things like Yelp and we can use things like Google to see what people are saying about those places. So we no longer have to go into a school blindly. We can actually do a little bit of research. If you look up the language school in Denver on Yelp, you can see we've got over 10 5-star reviews. And if you dig into those reviews, here are our Google reviews. We've got over 24 5-star reviews. We've got a total of 4.8. You can see what people are saying. So this guy named Jay Tide said, I've been at the language school for about 6 months studying Spanish, and it's been a wonderful experience. Pedro, my teacher's really great. He's patient, and his English is impeccable. I'm now starting to be able to speak, and blah, blah, blah. You can see Izzy said his little sister learned English with us last year, and she's really happy. Firefox29 says he's learned a lot, and he would definitely recommend it to somebody else. Now, these are real results from real students, so you can see what people are saying. Based off of what people are saying, you should have a good idea going into the place. But now you also need to take it to the next level and evaluate programs. I strongly encourage you, even if you live here in Denver, don't just call the language school. Call the top 3 results or call the top 5 results or however many you want to. But ask them these types of questions. First, I actually want to start off with a couple of questions that are not on this list. The number one question I get is, how much does it cost? And I'm going to tell you, I don't like this question because a dollar amount, a price, does not give you any idea of if it's going to help you achieve the results that you're looking for. So you have to ask results-based questions, not just how much does it cost and when are the classes. That really doesn't tell you about the quality of the program and the results that you can expect to get from studying with us. I would much rather have students ask, first and foremost, how many students are allowed in the class? If you're looking to learn how to speak Spanish, you want smaller classes. Smaller classes means more attention for you, more of your questions getting answered, and more importantly, more of your time speaking in the class as opposed to other people speaking in the class. Another great question, who are the teachers and what are their qualifications, For example, there are some community-based programs around here that teach Spanish and English and some other languages. Now, that's great. They typically don't charge a whole lot of money, but oftentimes what they do is they rely on volunteers. And when it comes to learning a language, I strongly encourage you to avoid somebody that is volunteering to teach the language, and I think you should rather go with an expert in the language. There's nothing quite as profound and deep as a new language, and if you're with the wrong teacher, it's going to make it a bad experience. If you're with somebody that really knows what they're doing, that's very well educated, that has several years of experience teaching the language, they're not going to be doing any guesswork with you. They're not going to be learning as you learn. No, they're going to have the answers that you're looking for, and it's going to maximize your time in the class. Really important question: for whom are the classes? You want to ask this question because if you are an adult and you're looking for conversation classes, you're going to be wanting to study at a very different type of program than a 20-year-old college student that's looking to satisfy their academic credits. It's just something that you want to study with like-minded people. You want to make sure that the focus of the class is in line with your reasons for learning Spanish. And then finally, what is the focus of the classes? So there are academic programs, there are grammar classes, there are reading classes, there are writing classes, there are conversation classes, there are movie classes, there are culture classes. There's actually, it's not just that a Spanish class is a Spanish class. There are many types of Spanish classes. So you have to ask, what's the focus? If you want to learn conversation and you enroll in a writing class, you're not going to get what you're looking for. Vice versa. If you're learning how to improve your writing, then, for example, the language school might not be the best place for you. There are different outcomes, and I'll tell you that as an instructor here, as the director of the school. It doesn't happen very often, but when I do get students that are looking to improve their writing skills for work because they're in a law firm and they have a lot of correspondence going on, I might send you to one of the community colleges or the universities. Finally, you want to ask people, can I take a placement test? This is important because there are some programs that do not divide their classes into levels. Everybody, regardless of how much or how little Spanish they speak, is welcome to join the class. What that should tell you is it's not a very organized place, and it's not very professional. I don't agree with programs that do that, because there's a very big difference between somebody that's just getting started and somebody that really speaks a lot of Spanish and is just trying to perfect it. Also, psychologically, if you're just getting started and you're sitting next to somebody that really speaks a lot of Spanish, you're going to be more nervous, you're going to be on your guard, you're going to be less inclined to speak. Whereas if you don't speak any Spanish and nobody else in the class speaks Spanish, everybody feels comfortable, you're going to be a lot more relaxed and just be able to go with the flow. So you want to make sure that the place will give you a placement test and has classes divided into levels to make sure that you're going to focus on what you're learning and what you want to learn. Thanks so much for watching our video today. I really hope this was beneficial. This is one of, I think, the most important parts of this series, is to try and get people to think that, Spanish class isn't just Spanish class. There are many different forms of Spanish classes that are out there. There are many different reasons why you might want to study Spanish, and I think it's really important that you find a place that's going to give you the results that you're looking for. If you have any questions, please give us a call. The number here is 303-997-9207. And you can also stop in and visit us if you're here in Denver, 4730 Oakland Street, Suite 300. That's in Northeast Denver in the Montbello neighborhood. Thank you so much for your time today, and we really look forward to Easy Step number 4 coming soon. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today. I really hope that you enjoyed our easy step number 3. This is a very powerful lesson that's going to teach you how to find a program in your area that's going to teach you the Spanish that you want to learn. Don't just take it for granted that Spanish classes are Spanish classes. There are many different types of programs, instruction, classes, software out there, and I really want to make sure that you know what you need to know in order to make a decision that's going to give you the results that you're looking for. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to contact us. I'd love to hear from you. Give us a call at 303-997-9207. You can also come visit us if you're in the Denver area. We're located in Northeast Denver in the Montbello neighborhood, 4730 Oakland Street, Suite 300. And stay tuned, easy step number 4 is coming soon.